let's go to Mark chapter 2 and around verse 20 or so. Because see, Tracy, once folks get this into their head, yeah, verse 19, perfect, beginning of that paragraph. Once people get this into their head, they will see this everywhere. And by the way, that's another biblical rule. If you have a Bible teacher that continuously uses one phrase or one verse and they use that to rubber stamp everything they want to say, huge red flag. If you have a Bible teacher that is saying, "Hey, here's what I think the Bible's saying, and I can show you here, it's what the Bible's saying," you're in a pretty safe place that that's what it's saying. Jesus says here in Mark chapter 2, verse 19, Jesus said to them, "Can the children of the bride chamber fast while the bridegroom is with them?" In other words, he's with them. Fasting has to do with mourning in this context. Why would they mourn? I'm with them. As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. Now listen to this in verse 20. But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and then shall they fast in those days. He's talking about his ascension in verse 20. But listen to this in verse 21. See if this makes sense. No man also seweth a piece of new cloth on an old garment. Why, Jesus? Why wouldn't we do that? Because Jesus didn't come to do a patch job on the old covenant.
Amen.
You don't take something new and try to patch something broken. So he says here, you don't take new cloth, because remember, there's this idea of stretching and contracting with this new cloth. So he says, else, verse 21, else the new piece that filled it up taketh away from the old. In other words, when they start to flex, he says, and the rent is made worse. You'll have a worse hole than you started with because they don't grow at the same time. Here's a parallel illustration in verse 22. And no man putteth new wine into old bottles, else the new wine doth burst the bottles, and the wine is spilt, and the bottles will be marred, but new wine must be put into new bottles. In other words, when you have a fermentation process and there's gases moving in the wine, you have to put it in a new wineskin or a new bottle, because that fermentation process, there's an expansion of gases with that. And the bottle grows as the expansion of gases happen in the fermentation process. So if that's already happened, you cannot pour out that wine and then use that exact same wineskin for another fermentation process. Why? Because it's already been stretched out. So it will only stretch so far, and then it'll break. And what Jesus is saying is, and remember what we learned later in the upper room, the new covenant is the wine is my blood, which is poured out for you. That's the new covenant. And so he's saying, I did not come to make a patch job on the old covenant. And I, by the way, did not come to give you a refresher wine in your old wineskin. We're going to have a new garment totally. We're going to have a completely new wineskin and bottles with new wine in it. This is not going to be a filling up of the old, which, by the way, just as a reminder, we can go to Jeremiah 31 real quick, if that's all right. And I want to show people a very important part of Jeremiah 31. Jeremiah told us this.
Wow. And we're made new creatures.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, no, we're not. Yeah, we're not improving on the old. I just want to show you this in Jeremiah 31:31 and 32. So Jeremiah is foretelling of this idea of, you can start probably at 27. We don't need to do this today, but if you want to study on your own, folks, that'd be a good place to start with that paragraph there. But in 31, he says, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Now, notice the sentence does not stop there, and this is the key part for our study tonight. He says in verse 32, describing the new covenant is not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. Remember what Exodus 20 said before the 10 Commandments? I'm speaking to you, house of Israel, that I took you out of the land of Egypt. So he's saying specifically here in verse 32, I'm making a new covenant, and it is not an improvement on the old one. It's different. It's not new wine in old wineskins, new wineskins, new wine. It's not a patch job on an old garment. It's a new garment. And he says that right here in Jeremiah 31:32 as well.
I mean, that's amazing. And he's telling them right there that they didn't even keep it back then. Moses' covenant right there in verse 32, which my covenant they break. Although I
Right.
was an husband unto them. There goes metaphor again of,
Yeah.
spiritual adultery too, right? Wow.
Right. Yeah.